not to lead a stress-free life. Rather, to utilize stress to propel ourselves forward, to become better versions of ourselves, to handle the load and to achieve greater tasks. Control is important when analyzing our stress. If we feel out of control with our schedules and decisions, we tend to interpret our stress in a negative way. Example, middle management suffers the most from stress, anxiety, and depression. They have the greatest workload to control ratio. They are told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and what their schedules are. In contrast, upper management may have a greater workload, but they also have a great deal of control. Lower management may have the least control, but not as much workload as middle management. Stress is best when it is stimulating and for a short, determined period of time. Example, playing a game of basketball is a stressful event. You want to win and do your best. You have 4 quarters to achieve your goal, and you have the skills and determination to do so. I bet after a successful game, you would interpret the event as play and not a stressful event to ruminate over. Take-home message. Stress is not a bad thing, but taking time to analyze your stress is important. If it is not stimulating to you and driving you forward, then it needs further evaluation. And with that being read, I want to welcome you back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is a doctor of chiropractic, fitness coach, athlete, entrepreneur, certified strength and conditioning specialist. Today's guest is Dr. Ellen Kindelsperger. Ellen, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ellen, we're going to start things off today with a little bit of a warm-up. And I just kind of want to start off with the first question, which is, how do you start your day, and do you kind of have like a morning routine that you like to stick to?
I do. I am an early morning riser, depending on if I have to get to the gym first or to my chiropractic office first. If it's a gym, I will generally get up around 4:30 or 5 o'clock, have some breakfast, throw some clothes on, and get out the door. For chiropractic, it's basically the same, but I sleep until 5 o'clock,
okay,
or maybe 5:30.
Cool. Now, in regards to grabbing a bite to eat or your breakfast in the morning, is there something that you kind of usually go to for breakfast?
Well, I'm from the Midwest, so I tend to gravitate towards toast or
cool.
English muffin.
All right.
Some peanut butter and jam, and some coffee.
Okay, so pretty light then.
Pretty
Obviously
light,
a little
simple.
snack to get things going. All right,
Yeah.
cool. All right, so the next question that I have for you, Ellen, is favorite book. Is there a favorite book that you have, or a book that you like to gift often?
The book that I give out the most often is called Healing Psoriasis by John Pagano. It changed my life in a big way. I've had psoriasis since I was 3 years old, up until now, but I don't have skin lesions anymore because of the book.
Right.
So if I hear that any of my clients have psoriasis or eczema, I will hand out that book.
Okay, awesome. And we're going to definitely, dig into that a little bit deeper here later on, because that's a big part of your story and who you are. So the next question that I have is favorite quote or mantra?
When I message my clients or send out emails, I always put at the end, have an epic day. My alarm says epic day or crush it. So I would say that those two things are probably my mantras.
Cool. Now, obviously we know what epic is, and we kind of understand the gist of having an epic day, but for you personally, what does that mean? Just kind of like just trying to live your day to the fullest each day? Is that kind of the gist of it?
Try to utilize your day to the best that it can be. I mean, crap happens, but just let it pass on by and continue on, and you still have the rest of your day to achieve your stuff.
Beautiful. All right. So the last question, Ellen, for our warm-up is favorite or most listened to podcast?
The Health Edge, translating the science of self-care. That is definitely my most favorite podcast. It has a specific topic for each podcast, like omega-3s, gluten, all that stuff. And it takes the science and makes it very understandable for the average person.
Sweet. All right, Ellen. So we're gonna take a deep dive now into kind of your backstory, your background, kind of where you grew up, kind of like your childhood, and then once we kind of get outside of that, maybe into high school, extracurricular activities, sports, things of that nature that you were involved in, just so that myself and the 127 Fit podcast listeners can kind of get a better picture of just kind of like what life was for you growing up, if you don't mind sharing that.
Sure, let's do it.
So where did you grow up? And then just kind of like, if mom and dad were in the picture, siblings, and then after that, if you just kind of want to touch on kind of like high school and maybe what those years looked like for you.
Yeah, I grew up in a very small town in Illinois called Swedona. Had about 200 people residing there.
I grew up in a town of 5,000. 200 that's legit small.
That can be very shocking to people. We had a Lutheran church, which my grandmother was an organist at. Walked to church. And had a Christmas tree farm, and that's basically it.
Yeah.
Didn't even have a post office, so we actually had to borrow the neighboring town 5 miles away if you wanted to send me some mail. So
that's funny.
Yeah, very small town. Grew up on a farm. My dad farms alfalfa, hay, corn, and soybeans, and my mom is a nurse.
Okay.
And then I have one older sister. Her name is Annalise.
Cool. So, growing up in a small town, like I just said, I grew up in a town of 5,000 people. 200 that's like a whole nother level of small town. But when you grow up in a small town, everybody knows everybody. A lot of people are related. Is that kind of the experience that you had? And if so, did you like that? Because I know for my experience of growing up in a small town, now as an adult, I don't like that. It's nice to go back to a small town just to maybe catch your breath a little bit, but I don't like the whole small town vibe or jam. I like the bigger city because I don't like everybody knowing my business. I don't like to be around everybody that's related. So do you kind of think the same way, or do you still kind of like the small town thing?
When I was growing up, I felt like I was always trying to get away from it.
Right.
And so, we'll talk about this later, but I went to northern Iowa for school, and that's also a small town, Cedar Falls, still in a cornfield. So after that, I wanted to move to a big city, so I moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area. So I was always looking to get away from it, but now looking back, I definitely appreciate the small town aspect of it. Yeah. You wave at everyone that drives by you because it's probably your cousin or your neighbor.
Yeah.
So kind of both.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could go back to that small of a town. I like being able to go get my groceries and go see a movie or meet up with friends.
For sure, yeah. And where we're at today and where your practice is here in Boulder, because I'm from Colorado Springs and then spend a lot of time in Denver for the podcast interviews and stuff. But Boulder to me is like it's a beautiful community, but it doesn't feel like too big to me. It's kind of got that. It's got everything you want that a big city has, and the type of people you generally find in a bigger city, and viewpoints and things like that. But it's still kind of. I always get a small town feel to it. So it's kind of maybe you've got the best of both worlds.
Well, yeah, I think that was a response to. So I was in a very small town. Then I moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area, and that was very overwhelming for me.
Right.
And so originally I was going to move to Denver to be close to my best friends, but then someone showed me Boulder, and then it just seemed like a good combination of the two. Like still a city, but still very accessible, still liberal.
Right.
So yeah, fell in love with it.
Yeah, good deal. So small town, 200 people. Sounds like you had a pretty solid upbringing and growing up on the farm. Probably learned the good old farm work ethic and everything, right? And up early and milking cows, all that type of stuff. which is, when people
It's
think...
more about the hay bales.
What's that?
It's more about the hay bales.
Hay bales, yeah.
That's why my hands are so strong for chiropractic.
That's awesome. That's good. But I know, when people ask where I'm from, I'm from Iowa. I went to college in South Dakota, lived in South Dakota. The Midwest, and it always seems to go back to, kind of like the work ethic and everything, which is something I'm proud of. Like when people think of the Midwest, they think of the work ethic, and I think, a lot of the people. I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm or anything. My mom did, but still, there's just, I think, that generational work ethic from kind of the farming communities and just kind of like that old school, just, take care of business, working. I think that's kind of been passed on through the generations kind of in the Midwest, because anybody outside the Midwest that I come in contact with, they usually say in some form or fashion, those people, they know how to work, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So those are some values that I think you probably gained from growing up where you grew up. So that's really cool. Now, transitioning into high school, Alan, what did kind of high school look like for you? And then what was kind of like the extracurricular activities scene for you when you got into high school and got a little bit older into your teenage years?
Yeah, I was very busy in high school. I was always in a sport. And that's kind of what you did. I did basketball, volleyball, cross country, track. I played softball in the summers, so I really was never without a sport to do. Always busy. And it was a big part of my life.
So, is there maybe something, maybe an event or just something that you went through during high school that you don't mind sharing, that was maybe something that sticks with you still to this day? Maybe I don't know, because you go into high school, if you're trying to find yourself, we maybe in small towns there's not really a lot to do. I know
there's
for
not.
me, I grew up in a very conservative home, went to church, and have kind of the whole pastor lineage in my family. But then towards the end of high school, I started drinking, and that kind of snowballed into college and kind of being out of control and was getting kicked out of college for drinking. Was there anything that you kind of struggled with or had to overcome in high school, finding yourself, or just kind of maybe the drinking thing that you don't mind sharing that maybe somebody could kind of relate to?
I think I really wanted to go to college, and I wanted a way to get there. Right. And not growing up with a lot of money, I knew that I needed to get a scholarship. Right, okay. And so... And I didn't want my college to be a financial burden for my parents. Right. So I think I really latched on to that. And I would say freshman, sophomore year, I did a ton of sports. And then junior, senior year, I really felt like I could get a scholarship running track. And so I had a shift then, started doing cross country and track, and then also doing this program called Acceleration to hopefully get me to the level that I needed to be at. Cool. And so I would say I was a very, very focused high school student. And then I did just that, worked my butt off, got myself a scholarship to run for Northern Iowa, and then that was kind of my ticket to go to college.
Now, you mentioned that you had one Lutheran church in your hometown. Was I don't like to use the word religion, so I'm just gonna use the word faith. Was faith a big part of your family and your upbringing?
Sort of. Okay. I would say, both my parents went to Luther College. Okay. Yeah. They were religious, but we didn't talk about it a lot. But we always went to church. Yeah, it was kind of the you go to church kind of thing.
You do, I understand.
Yeah. Cool. But they never made me feel like I had to feel a certain way. Right. But they wanted to make sure that I was, honest and making good decisions and developing into a good person. Yeah. So I think globally, that was the focus of
and it just, I can relate so much to your story so far just because of the small town, the Midwest. There's just a certain kind of way of life, most people in the Midwest grew up going to some sort of church or have some sort of youth group or catechism, and just again the work ethic, certain values, and it's a lot of us, I think, from that area could probably just say, probably most of us, the majority of us would have kind of a similar story in those beginning years. Obviously there might be a divorced parent or some tragic things that happen, but I can definitely relate and understand that. Now, I want to touch on just a little bit more on kind of like your work ethic and you being focused, because a lot of times in high school, like I mentioned, like when I was growing up, I was, a super focused kid. I used to like shoot 100 made baskets, every day. My mom would drop me off at this gas station in Cherokee. I'd run to school. So like I was just always, I didn't go to school dances. We could start going to school dances in 7th grade. I didn't go until 8th grade because I had to get my lifting in, my running in, my 100 shots. So all that stuff, so I was always like very focused, very driven. So I just want to touch on that a little bit, Ellen, for you. Like you said towards the end, like maybe your junior year, you're like, hey, maybe I can get a track scholarship, and you really like started focusing on that. So was that kind of getting that scholarship, going to college to run track, was that really your focus and just kind of like where you put all of your mindset and energy
100%
in high school?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now where does that come from? Do you think that's maybe just something that some of those values you got from being around the farm life and your mom and dad, or do you think it's more of just kind of an inner thing that you were born with?
I think it's probably both. I think I always had that drive. And also, my dad is a very hard worker. Being a farmer, his dad was a farmer. We grew up on the same farm that he grew up on. And he is extremely stoic, doesn't complain, and he gets it done. So I don't think I've ever seen my dad upset or mad. Right. And so I definitely had a very strong role model growing up. And then I am extremely competitive. So having that goal ahead of me really helped me focus through high school.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah. So let's, you've already mentioned going to the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls, and you've mentioned track. So let's just kind of move your story along, getting kind of like, well, obviously you would have had to have gotten recruited, right, by you and I. So let's talk about that, because that's a big process for kids out there. Let's talk about getting recruited. If you only got recruited by you and I, or what the whole recruiting process kind of looked like. And then since you were so focused from basically your junior year on, getting the scholarship, kind of what that meant to you and some of those feelings, emotions you went through. And then let's just kind of transition into college life.
Sure, yeah. So I was recruited by Coach Gefford from Northern Iowa, but I was also interested in Iowa State. Okay. And so really it was just between those two, and I just kind of went with the one that felt the best to me, just on a personal level. So I ended up going to Northern Iowa, and then I did feel a little bit lost once I got there, because my main goal was to get the scholarship and certain goals at state in high school. But then you reach your goal, then you're like, now what? I'm here. Yep. And so my freshman year at college went pretty okay. But then I had this thing called psoriatic arthritis pop up in my life. Okay. And so I've had skin lesions since I was 3, and I knew that, and that wasn't a problem. And then end of freshman year into sophomore year, all my joints started swelling up. And that also coincided with being a 400-meter runner. They threw me in an 800-meter one day, and I ran pretty fast. So they're like, oh, guess what? You're going to be an 800-meter runner. It's like, cool, awesome. That looks horrible, but let's do it.
Yeah, 800, that's intense. I ran 800s in high school, and that's an intense race. So.
Yeah, so my volume of training basically doubled. Like I was a 400, 800 runners, you're either a sprinter bumping up, or you're a miler bumping down. And for me, it was just this mass volume increase in training. And so it started with my right knee swelled up, got a cortisone shot, then both ankles, and then my left wrist. Okay. And they sent me to an orthopedist who said that I had tendinitis of all these joints, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm 20 years old and I'm swollen and I can barely run. And so I had a cortisone shot in the knee, and then another one in my wrist, and then they put a boot on one of my ankles. And I was not training for about 3 months, and I just felt like it wasn't the right diagnosis. And so I started digging into the information myself, and I came across psoriatic arthritis, which is, you have the skin sufferers. 15% of the skin sufferers have the arthritic form. So I went back to the orthopedist and I said, I don't think I have tendinitis of 5 or more joints. I think I have inflammatory condition. Could it be psoriatic arthritis? And I was right. He sent me to a rheumatologist who did some blood tests, and then I was diagnosed. And so that also played into the whole feeling lost part, because I identified myself as being a track athlete and a very good one. And then all of a sudden I have this inflammatory condition that's brought on by stress and physical stress, and I'm no longer fast.
Right.
And so, high school was easy. Right. And then I got to college, and that's where I would say a lot of transitioning happened.
Now, what year did you say was this sophomore year that all this stuff kind of
end of
started?
Freshman?
Okay.
Because it was in the freshman season that they threw me in the 800, and they're like, "Boom, you're an 800 runner."
Okay.
And so leading into the next year, things just started popping up, and then more knowledge was gained and understanding.
Right. Now, how did the track coach and you and I handle your scholarship then? Were you able to?
I was able to stay on.
Okay, that's
cool. I was still fast enough.
Okay.
To be on the 4x4 team and to run the open 4 and drop down from the 800 because that just proved just to be too much. And I was okay with that.
Okay. Yeah. No. Cool.
But another thing that also played into it is I had a different track coach every year of college.
Okay, that's tough.
Yep. So the head coach, Bucky, was recruited by Arkansas.
Okay.
And then Geffert went to Arkansas the next year, and then Coach Case went the following year. So different coach every year.
Wow.
So it was an interesting experience, but I love track, and I still do. And I made some of the best friends that I still have today. So overall, it was still an amazing experience, but I definitely had to go from I'm a track athlete to I'm a mediocre track athlete. What do I do with this?
Right. Now, what can you one more time mention what was the arthritis that you were struggling with?
Oh, psoriatic arthritis.
Okay. Now is that something that you still have to this day, or is it something that has gone away, or how does that work?
Autoimmune disease.
Okay.
So when you have an autoimmune disease, you were never without it, even though it's not presenting itself. So I still have psoriasis. I still have psoriatic arthritis, even though I don't have lesions and my joints aren't swollen. So yes. And then another important part of this story is the cortisone shots I was not impressed with. I had something called fat atrophy, which doesn't happen with everyone. It's where at the site of the injection, all your fat goes away. So my first one was in my wrist, and a couple days later, all the fat in my wrist went away. It was very freakish. And so basically it was just skin and bone.
Then, right? Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. There was a significant difference between this wrist and that wrist.
Right.
And so, but the swelling was gone, so that's good.
Yeah.
And then went back to the orthopedic surgeon. And this was a time where you just trust your doctors no matter what.
Right.
I was never really one to question too much until after this experience. And I went back because my knee was swollen. So he's like, "Oh, we'll do another cortisone shot." I was like, "Well, hold on, my wrist is gone. Is my knee going to be gone?" And he's like, "Oh no, that was just like a fluke." And he put it in my knee, and then all my fat went away in my knee. So after the diagnosis of psoriatic arthritis, the rheumatologist actually asked me, "What do I want to do?" Which I'm glad that he asked me and just didn't tell me what to do.
Right.
And right at that time, my mom had found the book called Healing Psoriasis. Okay. And so I was like, screw drugs. Let's do the natural route first, because we have time. I'm not, losing a limb here. Let's try this. And this is my own story. And not to say that this would happen for everyone, but at that point in time, I had skin lesions for 17 years. I went on an elimination diet and it went away. My skin lesions went away in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and that's exactly what a previous guest that I just interviewed on Saturday said. When she changed her diet, the lesions went away.
It was incredible. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, so for the listeners out there, again, like, you know, there's alternative routes out there. Don't just take one person's opinion on something. Do your research. We got to be our own advocates. You guys have heard me say this before on previous podcasts. And there's other routes out there. Doctors are great. We got to go to the doctor and get different physicals and checkups, all that. I'm not saying anything against that, but there's alternative routes, and we should exhaust those alternative routes if we don't want to have the medication and be on the medication for the rest of our life. Because when you get on the medication, then there's other ramifications, and you got to be on more medication, and it can just get expensive and crazy and out of control. Yeah. So it's cool to hear that you, and then, you know, a previous guest I just interviewed a couple days ago, it comes back to diet. Yeah. So let's just talk about that for anybody out there that maybe doesn't know what the elimination diet is. If you don't mind, Ellen, just talk about that and maybe talk about some of those inflammatory foods that you began cutting out in the beginning of your diet.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the diet is pretty hard, but you know, eventually you start adding in foods to see what happens. But the basic idea is taking your stomach from an acidic state to an alkaline state to allow the gut lining to heal. And the belief is that the skin is a secondary organ for eliminating toxins. So if you heal the gut, heal the small intestine, your skin should heal. They talk about the leaky gut syndrome. Yeah. Not an approved term, but definitely a term that's being talked about. Right. So depending on who you talk to, they might say it's a real thing. They might also believe in it. So, but for me, it definitely worked. So you start with very bland foods, plain rice, chicken, fish, vegetables, and then you start adding things in. And then for me, it was definitely cow's milk, lactose. Yeah. And living in the Midwest, there's cow's milk in everything that you eat. You have cereal and milk with your lunch and milk with your dinner. I thought it was gluten too, but in the last 2 years, I added gluten back in, and I've been fine. Really? Cool. Yeah. Okay. But I also believe in eating bread the smart way, like artisan bread that has a couple ingredients and not 40 to 60 ingredients. So if you think that you're gluten intolerant, maybe try stuff that has, you know, fewer ingredients in it and less preservatives. So the cow's milk and the lactose, that was kind of a really big one that you kind of found that you had to eliminate, and then still to this day you kind of stay away from it. Or have you been able to add that back? I love cheese. So
yeah, me
like
too. Shredded cheese
feel like
is great.
Life without cheese is not as great. So I do eat cheese now, and the harder the cheese, the less lactose it has. Okay. Yeah. But if I have just a straight up cup of cow's milk, I will have psoriatic lesions in 3 to 5 days. Okay.
I appreciate you talking a little bit about that elimination diet, because things seem to always go back to just the basic and the simple. If you just stick to the basics and the simplicities of life, there'd be a lot more things that would just be better.
You'd be surprised though, like how resistant people are to it. I've had people on really hard drugs for their psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, and I tell them about the book, and I can just see this wall go up. Sure. They're like, I will not give up these things, even just for a short period of time. I was like, okay, it's free and it's gentle. Like, why not try it? But I keep pushing it.
Yep, for sure. No, that's great. And my mom's here with us today, visiting from Iowa, and she's a health nut like me, and we talk just all the time about, you know, we give out all this, you know, free information to these people, and we just want people to like eat better and just move, because we know that would, you know, fix and cure so many of their issues and ailments. And we always come back to like, nobody wants to listen. Like, it's just like people are so stuck in their way. I'm not giving up my Coke. I'm not giving up pizza. And it's like, then you're never gonna live the life that you could potentially live in regards to health and longevity and just enjoyment if you just keep eating what you're eating and living the life that you're living. So I'm right with you. Like, people. Well, and out here in Colorado, it's a little bit different, but I just think about like the people back in like the Midwest. It's like, this is the way we've done it. This is what I've always eaten. I'm not changing. And it's like,
I think culture plays a huge role in that. I'm reading this book called The Mind-Body Connection, and it talks about how we approach our health is culturally based. And I just started the book, but so far it's been very, very interesting. And I'd say living in Boulder, it's probably the easiest place to be gluten-free,
right?
Dairy-free, because most everyone else is doing it too.
Right, for sure.
So if you surround yourself with people doing similar stuff, it will help.
Yeah.
But in the Midwest, at that time when I first started, it was extremely hard to figure it out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know my mom, like, I think you've heard of Fairway food stores, right? Like, it's kind of like right in Iowa, kind of in the South Dakota Midwest.
Yeah, I used to go to Fairway.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So we're right on. You got it. But so Fairway is like where my dad used to be a manager of Fairway and all that, and then my mom, she shops at Fairway, and then there's Hy-Vee, which Hy-Vee quote unquote has higher prices, all this, all the Midwest Iowa stuff, kind of lingo or whatever. But what I'm trying to say is that until recently, like, my mom would shop at Fairway. She couldn't get the organic, couldn't get gluten free, they're getting a little bit better. Hy-Vee is way ahead of they're dialed in or whatever. But going back to that, even like you go to a grocery store that you've always shopped at, it's like you really can't find back. I'm talking about back in the kind of the Midwest and smaller towns. You can't get the organic stuff. You can't get the gluten free, the non-GMO, and it's just like it can be really tough. It
absolutely.
Really can.
I mean, my dad, for him to go to a quality grocery store, Hy-Vee, takes him 30 minutes. Yeah. Guess what's closer? The Corner Mart.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So he's
Casey's, right? Is there? Do you have Casey's in your town?
It maybe the next town over.
Oh, okay. Have you ever had Casey's pizza?
Yes.
That's my roommate's from Iowa. He's a school teacher at my school, and
that's
we're
like
always
a thing.
Casey's pizza, is the hidden gem of all pizza. And it's a gas station, and whenever you think of gas station food, you think gross, disgusting package. But I don't know, Casey's pizza. I don't know. If you ever get to Iowa or that area, try Casey's pizza. Even though it's not healthy, not gluten free, but
tastes like Midwest.
one slice will be good enough. You'll understand it.
Do you say pop?
Pop, yeah.
Okay,
I say if I say to my students, if I say pop, pops.
Like the noise.
I sometimes say pop's liquid poison. Stay away from it. That's what I say to my kids, my students, because I'm a PE teacher, and they're like, "What's pop?" I'm like, "Soda."
I'm still trying to break myself.
People don't even. They're like, "What's pop?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What's pop?" It's it's soda. I don't know. I think down south it's like you
soda
Coke or
Coke
or Pepsi, right? That's how they order it. Yeah. Anyway, so let's go back. So you, from my understanding, a little bit of the research I did on your website, you got a bachelor's degree in kinesiology. Is that correct?
That is correct.
From you and I.
Yes.
Okay. So then, and my bachelor's degree is in exercise science, and I think those words are kind of interchangeable depending upon what college or university you go to. But so. What was kind of the impetus behind you getting a BS in kinesiology? And then let's start transitioning into kind of going off to become a doctor of chiropractic.
Sure, yeah. Well, I started off as pre-med, and then sophomore year, I was taking chemistry, and I really disliked chemistry. And it made me kind of rethink everything. And so I made a big switcheroo, and I switched to art. Okay. And so I'm a bit of an artist.
Cool.
And so did art for a while, and I felt like making my hobby into my job, I was a little unsure of where I was going. Yeah. And so I thought, what am I doing? What am I going to do with this degree? And so that also coincided with the psoriatic arthritis, the discovery of the anti-inflammatory elimination diet, and I felt like I wanted to help people in a holistic way. I didn't want to go to med school and work in a hospital.
Right.
Like I have that entrepreneur drive as well. And so I felt like if I can combine the holistic healing, kinesiology, because I love sports and I love movement, and being an entrepreneur, that would fulfill my life the most.
For sure.
And I basically grew up in the land of chiropractic. Chiropractic was born out of Davenport, Iowa, which is part of the Quad Cities, which is the closest, most significant city to where I grew up. And so I grew up going to a chiropractor, and so in college I felt like going that route would bring me the most happiness.
Cool. Yeah, I grew up going to a chiropractor as well, and a huge proponent of it. So now you graduate from UNI with your undergraduate degree in kinesiology.
Yep.
Did you immediately then go into your chiropractic schooling?
I did.
Okay,
yes.
and then how many years was that until you got to become a
Three and a
doctor?
quarter years.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
beyond undergrad.
Now, what's the name of the college that you went to?
Palmer
Right,
Palmer College West.
Yeah, and that's that's for like the Midwest. That is like the chiropractic college.
Yep. So
right?
that's the original school. There's a Palmer in Davenport, Iowa. I went to the one in California.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So San Jose, California. There's also one in Florida.
Okay.
I wanted to see something else, so I was either going to go to California or Florida. And honestly, I didn't think too hard. I just chose one and got in my car and drove and showed up and started school and did that and worked in the Bay Area for a couple years. And I knew I wanted to open up my own practice, and I did not want to do that in the Silicon Valley.
Right.
It's just a crazy place.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
if you're not tech, it's extremely hard to survive there or commute 2 hours one way, 2 hours back. So. After working there for a couple of years, knowing I wanted to open my own practice, I wanted to be closer to home, and I wanted to be close to my friends. Some of my best friends, my track friends from college, live in Denver, and so I came and checked it out, and someone showed me Boulder, and that was kind of it.
Okay, sweet. So let's start digging in then a little bit, Ellen, in regards to your chiropractic practice now, because you're more than just like, I mean, I've been to a lot of chiropractors. The chiropractor that my dad still goes to, it's basically you walk in, pops your back, pops your neck, you give him the cash, and you walk out. Right. So I want because I know you're a lot more than that, and you know you have your CSCS and things of that nature. You work with professional athletes. So let's just start talking about how you kind of figured out how you wanted to operate as a chiropractor, because I know I listen to a lot of different podcasts. I've been to different chiropractors, and some chiropractors have a really bad rap. A lot of people won't even walk into a chiropractic office because there is a bad rap. They've had a bad experience, what have you. So how did you kind of determine, like, hey, I want to separate myself maybe from the bad chiropractic practices, or however you want to word that, and be more than just walk in, pop, and walk out type. So just walk us through that if you don't mind.
Well, I call them the rack 'em stack 'em.
Rack 'em stack 'em, because they're making making the money, right?
Yeah.
Just pop them and getting the money, or
not to say that there isn't a benefit to that, because I do think there is power in the adjustment, but that's not the kind I wanted to be.
Right.
And first of all, you can be to be a chiropractor can mean many different things. You can be an activator chiropractor, meaning that you use this little instrument, kind of looks like a syringe.
Yeah.
You can do diversified adjustments, soft tissue work, exercise with chiropractic, soft touch, hard touch. Like it can be very confusing. You can go to one chiropractor, have one experience, and have a wildly different experience somewhere else.
Yeah, I've been there. For sure.
Yeah. So not to say that pure adjustment isn't, bad, but I personally like the soft tissue with the chiropractic. I think it makes the adjustment stay longer. I also believe in not forcing people into adjustments either. Not all of my people I adjust. if they're not into the cervical or upper neck adjustment, I don't do it.
Cool.
Partially because if they're uncomfortable, that makes me, I want them to be comfortable. If they're stiffening up, that's not good either. And so I just wanted to cast my net a little bit wider than just the adjustment alone. So I call myself a blended chiropractor or a sports chiropractor. Along with the kinesiology, I'm nestled between a chiropractor, PT, massage therapist, and a fitness coach. So I do soft tissue work, adjustments, rock tape, corrective exercise.
Yeah.
And then my initial exams are 90 minutes, and then follow-up is 30. So I spend quite a bit of time with my patients.
That's cool. Now, on your website, it says kind of like the gist of you and your businesses: realign, release, and reinforce. So, do you want to just maybe explain those words or give us the definitions and kind of what all of that means for the listeners and myself?
Yeah. So realign, that's referring to the adjustment.
Okay.
So either aligning the spine or creating movement where there was restriction. Release, referring to the soft tissue work. So tightened muscles, contracted muscles, scar tissue, and then reinforce is the exercise.
Okay.
So deactivated muscles that need to be activated, mobility to restriction.
So when you have a client come in, because again, a lot of my chiropractic experience has been you walk in, you get adjusted, and you walk out. Right. I feel that it's really important. It's just like for me, if I'm going to walk into the weight room and lift weights, I just don't walk up to 315 pounds on the squat bar and start squatting. I need to be warmed up. I need to get the blood flowing, all that type of stuff. So for you, if somebody walks in and you go through the assessment and everything, before you adjust somebody, do you find that there is value in having them have some sort of heat or some sort of movement before you adjust them, or not necessarily?
For me, I like to start with the soft tissue.
Okay.
I think it helps relax them. It helps to relax the muscles around the adjustment. And it also gives me more information before the adjustment too. So I think on both ends it's good for both people if you spend a little bit of time working on the muscles first and then lead into the adjustment.
So you've mentioned soft tissue a couple of times. For people out there that might not understand kind of what all that is, can you just dig a little bit deeper into what it means when you work on the soft tissue? Because I think also, do you do, is it called the Grafton or something?
Yep.
Is that kind of part of that?
Yep. So the closest things that you could describe that you might have heard, active release technique, ART.
Yeah.
It's like a massage through range of motion. So you say I'm working on your bicep, you shorten the bicep. I use my hands to put tension on the bicep as we open up the arm, put the bicep on stretch. So this will restore the length of the muscle either by resetting the Golgi tendon organs, which are the organs that sense how long the muscle is, or releasing scar tissue. So scar tissue is like the healed tissue around injury. It's like taking Elmer's glue to a situation. Like you have a bicep, tear in your bicep, glues it back together. It's haphazard in the way that it forms. It's also not as strong, and it leads to a shortened muscle. Okay. So that's your body's natural response. Natural response is good, but over time that can lead to compensation. So that's why you go see a chiropractor or ART specialist to restore your natural range of motion.
So in your practice, do you do ART or not?
So I've taken the ART courses full body. I just don't say I'm ART anymore. So I just do soft tissue work. Okay.
So like that soft tissue work. So if I come in, what does that soft tissue work before the adjustment look like with you? Like what are you? Are you using tools, or what does that kind of look like?
So the soft tissue work, like the ART style, is using my hands. Okay. And so I'm moving your limbs. So say I'm working on your shoulder, I'm either having you move your shoulder in a certain way while I work on muscles.
Okay.
I often will do a muscle test before and after to see if I had any effect on that muscle. So say your supraspinatus was not firing, I'll do the supraspinatus move. I'll retest it. Is it firing now? And then move on.
Okay.
And it depends on what you have going on. And then I also use tool-assisted soft tissue. So much like Graston, it's like a dull butter knife that you can take to muscles, tendons, ligaments, and the main goal of that is to release scar tissue.
Okay. Yeah, I've had a chiropractor do that. I've had some hip issues and like hip flexor stuff, and he dug in. I don't know, felt all right, I guess, but I've never had it done.
It doesn't always feel great.
Yeah, but I mean, it was kind of a weird experience. I was like, I don't know, but.
And I'll use my hands and the tool-assisted soft tissue interchangeably depending on what it is. Sometimes I use both on the same area, but like on my climbers for their tennis elbow, I use a rock blade, much like Graston.
Okay.
So if you've heard of rock tape, they have the rock blade.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll use that on their extensor wad here, and it works really well.
Cool. So you start with the you start with the soft tissue work, and then if somebody needs to be realigned or whatever through the actual popping or whatever,
adjusting.
That's what comes next, right? In your practice, your style.
Yep.
Okay, so that soft tissue work then is basically warming things up, loosening things up. If there are any kinks or however you word that in your world or realm, like that's going to loosen things up, right? Kind of prepare the spine and all of that type of stuff for the adjustments, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and then there's things going on in the body that. Like if you have a shoulder issue, adjusting your cervical spine and thoracic spine will help because those nerves exit the spine and they innervate those muscles. But if you have tennis elbow, you're going to benefit from direct, treatment of the tennis elbow of the shoulder. And so in that way, I can, treat more than just spinal issues.
Very cool. Now, I've also gone to. I've got all kinds of stories because I just take my body very serious and my health, and I've tried some different massage techniques and chiropractics and stuff. So I've also gone to somebody and got like specific fascia, like massage. So where does maybe just explain a little bit to the listener like what the fascia is, and then with your soft tissue work. Does that fascia get affected as well?
Oh, absolutely. So I describe the fascia as a saran wrap around your muscles. And so all the fascia of your body is connected. So if you do have a tight area, it can affect the whole chain. And so you can affect the fascia with any soft tissue that you do. So the rock blade and the soft tissue manipulation will help release that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So like if I have someone with plantar fasciitis, I will not only work on the foot, but I'll also work on the calf and on up the leg because I know it's all interconnected. You don't have just a plantar fascia problem.
Right.
You have fascial connection, and you have mechanical factors that are attributed to that, mainly up at the hips that affect the knees, that affect the arch of your foot and the way that your foot lands on the ground with each stride. So I don't look at just where the pain is.
Right.
I look at each of my patients as a whole human and numbers of factors that can be attributed to it.
Yeah, that's the way it should be because I mean people just don't understand like everything in our body, the muscles, ligaments, tendon, fascia, whatever, like it's all connected. It's all like everything. Like if you look at an anatomy chart where it's just the anatomy of a human, the front and back, where it's like everything is connected. So and you brought it up, and this is something that I had written down because this is kind of a new discovery for me over the last year. I purchased zero drop shoes and tried to get out of my my Nike running shoes, especially at school because I'm on my feet all day.
You're wearing Nike.
Yeah, no, I know.
Right now.
Yeah, because my zero drops, like I usually don't wear socks, so they're kind of smelly. So I wanted to wear something that was so smelly. But
Thank you.
Anyways, you're welcome. Yeah. But anyway, so like I've been doing a lot more learning on like the importance of foot health and getting into those minimalist shoes and kind of getting back to even walking barefoot or in our socks and things of that nature. So just explain a little bit to myself and the listeners, Alan, the importance of taking care of our feet and the importance of having the right shoes when we are running or walking or just standing on our feet.
Yeah, I'm definitely a supporter of the zero drop shoe. It helps with the natural gait of your run, hitting that midfoot and not the heel. Right. Because that force, with every step you have that force going through your body, and you want to minimize it with each stride. Especially you ultra runners, like that's a long time to be just jamming your heels into the ground. But with my athletes, I focus out on the hips a lot. A lot of glute medius weakness out there. So if your glute med, which is like your side butt muscle, if that's weak, then your knees tend to come together. It's called valgus. And if your knees start to come together, either with lunging, walking, running, then that flattens out the arch of your foot, which stretches the plantar fascia, and all that affects the way that you interact with the ground with your running. So shoes are definitely important. Get zero drop. Make sure it's comfortable. Make sure that the back tab of the shoe is not rubbing on your Achilles tendon, because you have a bursa on the other side of the tendon that can be inflamed. So make sure that your shoes are on point, but also doing strength training with your running is extremely important. Absolutely.
So cupping, what's your? I just got cupped recently, and what are your thoughts on that? And is there just anything that you maybe want to share about that?
I don't know a whole lot about cupping. All I know is that I love it.
Okay,
yeah,
well, I think that's a pretty positive endorsement. That's cool. That makes me feel better that I'm getting it done.
I go to an acupuncturist on the regular, and she does cupping, and I feel great afterwards. Cool. Okay. So, what I've found with holistic care is whether or not you find a paper that says it works or not, if you think it works, then it does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Placebos work. So in my mind, it helps release stress, and I hold my stress in the TL junction, so that's where your thoracic meets your lumbar. The muscles along the spine there, I get really tight, and she does cupping there, and it releases, and I feel great. So
awesome. That's great. Now, what's maybe one of the biggest issues when you have a patient or client, however you want to word it, when they come into like your chiropractic practice, what's because you always hear like, I've got a little back pain, but I think you deal with a lot of athletes, so maybe this will be a little bit different. But what's one of the biggest issues that you see in your clientele in your chiropractic practice when they come in, like kind of just something that's a reoccurring theme?
I would say with low back pain, I have a lot of clients / patients who sit for 6 to 8 hours a day, and then they're weekend warriors, or they're trying to run an ultra. So they really hit both ends of the spectrum on, going really hard with their exercise, but they're also sitting for long periods of time. The act of sitting shortens your hip flexors, turns off your butt, turns off your core. The psoas gets all jacked up, and then they go and they run really hard.
Right.
And so that combination just is not really working for us right now. So I also have an interest in ergonomics. So if you can get an ergonomic evaluation of your workspace, that's going to save you. Ergonomics is a study of placing your body within your workstation. So how far your computer is from your face, where the computer monitor is, how high is your seat, how close is your seat, like all these different measurements come into play in how you hold your body as you work. And it's about making it as neutral as possible.
Right.
So reducing stress on your joints and your spine.
Okay. Now you mentioned earlier the importance of strength training in just taking care of yourself and all of those things. So, and you have your CSCS, which is Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist through NSCA, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, why don't you just touch on a little bit more, Ellen, just the importance of strength training? Because I know for me, especially people that do a lot of running, I feel like that's all they do is run. And then through that running, there's a lot of imbalances that occur and all of that. And, a lot of times I think runners, maybe the mindset is like, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to get bulky and all that, which that's just, all craziness. That's a whole nother podcast. But I just see
we
a lot
could go
of people,
very deep into that.
A lot of endurance athletes, let's just say that, not just runners, but a lot of endurance athletes, they shy away from strength training. They shy away from, probably the squats and the compound movements, which I personally feel are very important for not just a normal person all the way up to a professional athlete. So for you, what's the value and the importance of strength training with your clients and the people that come into your practice?
I'm glad that you brought this up because especially with all of my higher level athletes, if they've only been doing running or they've only been doing climbing, they've gotten far with it.
Right.
But if you only do those things, you're going to hit a wall.
Absolutely.
And then either you're going to plateau with your performance or you're going to have injury. And so, strength training is going to prevent injury and also get you to the next level as well. And so, like my runners, they might be strong with running. You should not see them lunge. They can barely do it.
Right.
Yeah. Or my climbers, they could be amazing out on the rocks, but you get them into my gym and they can't even find their middle and lower trap. So just because they're quote unquote strong in their sport does not mean that they're strong.
Right.
There's always weakness to be found.
For sure.
And sometimes it's very prominent, even in higher tier athletes.
Right.
So I like exposing those things on
the
exam, and they're like, oh, I didn't even know that I wasn't strong in this area.
Right.
And then I was like, well, you know what, that's good though, because if you came in here and did everything that I asked you to do, there's not a lot for us to do together. And so I encourage my new clients that, you're really bad at push-ups, or you can't hold a split squat for more than 20 seconds, but that gives me so much work to do. And think of all the improvement that you're going to have as an athlete in your sport.
Absolutely. So what does your strength training look like? Are you still affiliated with like OPEX?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay.
So I train my athletes out of Height Performance.
Okay.
But it's very much like OPEX in that each person, has their own exam that they do with me, and assessment, and I program on a weekly basis. Everyone has their own fitness programming designed for them.
Okay.
And I program on a weekly basis so I can keep up with what's happening in their life. Say they twist an ankle, or their hip hurts, or they're having a lot of stress this week. I can make changes on the fly that accommodates their life.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I do remote coaching as well. I use a service called True Coach.
Okay.
And so, say I'm training you. I get my programming done on Sundays. You're 5 times a week. I put your workouts up on the specific days that you want, and then it's sent to you.
Cool.
And you can see all that I want you to do: reps, sets, rest, and also every exercise comes with a video. So if you didn't know what a front foot elevated split squat was, boom, there's a video. Click it, plays for you, and I can also put in some writing there, like, stack 2 45-pound plates up, put your foot on it.
Okay. So I know your programming is individualized, and that's the way it should be. But is there kind of a general way that you kind of like to program? I mean, do you incorporate some of those compound movements like a barbell squat, like a deadlift, or is it fully 100% just dependent upon
it's
the
completely
specific client?
Yeah, I find myself either with athletes who have injuries or they want to get to the next level, or I get post-surgery people who have gone through PT and they feel lost. They know they shouldn't join a class because they don't know what they should change about certain movements, and they need a little bit more control in their programming. So my answer to you is completely individual. Not everyone should be doing a deadlift right now. You know, like if you just had low back surgery, we're gonna start somewhere else versus someone who doesn't have low back pain or post surgery. So I mean, there's definitely components that are similar. Like all my ultra runners, we all work on the gluteus medius and postural stuff. The most common answer to what goes first on your race, and they say it's my posture. They start leaning over. We activate without bulking up, which would be hard for them to do anyways.
It's just one of those myth things. It's just like females, like, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to look like you. I'm like, okay, that's not going to happen. I've got a lot more testosterone, I hope, than you do, and there's a lot of other differences.
I've had females say that. They look at me. I used to be a little bit bulkier, and I hold a lot of muscle, and I've had women just look at me, and they're like, I don't want to be as muscular as you are. I was like, well, damn, all right. You don't have to.
You're sprinting though, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's probably played, because sprinting is that explosiveness that builds muscle. So
you gotta have the butt and thighs to sprint.
Yeah,
so.
for sure. Glutes are good.
Yeah.
Glutes are good. All right, so we've been going for just about an hour, so we're gonna kind of start winding things down. There are a couple other things I want to touch on, Ellen, if you don't mind, and one of them is breath. That's something I've also gone to a couple people for hip issues and different things, and a couple of the people I went to see, they wanted to start with breath. I haven't explored that realm a whole lot, but do you want to just maybe talk about the importance of breath and our breathing, and is that a big component of what you also incorporate into your practice with your athletes and your clients?
I would say that I remind my patients on my table to breathe all the time.
Okay.
Partially because they're in pain.
Right.
Because I'm working on them, but because a lot of what I do is not very comfortable. So I do remind my patients to breathe, and you can handle a lot more than you think you can. Like if you're experiencing pain or stress and you start holding your breath and holding tension, if you just take a moment to become mindful with what you're experiencing, you can handle it better.
Right.
And so I think that can be applied to the moment, but like kind of most everything. Out on a run, you think it's really hard, check in with yourself, breathe. You can do this. In that way, I do talk about breath.
Cool. So you're an entrepreneur, and that's kind of like a big buzzword in our culture now. Everybody on their Instagram, not everybody, but a lot of people like entrepreneur. It's like, okay, well, are you really? But you are a legit entrepreneur, which is awesome. You have your own practice, your own business. So I don't want to dive too deep into that, just because we're kind of trying to finish up here. But what's maybe one? I want to ask this.
Sure.
What's one positive thing that you've taken away in the time that you've been an entrepreneur and had your own business? And then what's maybe, I don't want to say negative, but what's one maybe tough thing or lesson that you've had to learn or overcome obstacle in regards to being an entrepreneur? So let's start with what's one awesome positive thing of basically being your own boss, having your own business, and then answer maybe one thing that you've kind of had to overcome or learn in regards to being an entrepreneur.
This might kind of blend the two of them, but learning time management. Yeah, and then assessing what's important in your life. Like, I used to go party with friends quite a bit. Now I really don't want to. And you kind of weigh things in your life. Like for me, going out and drinking with friends is fun, and I still see my friends, but I'd rather go on a hike or go on a run. And so just kind of figuring out where you want to go, what's going to take you there, and how do you bring balance to it as well. And so, I don't know, just kind of gives me more purpose in my day and how I form my day and my week. And when I am with friends, I really focus on being with them and not trying to multitask
being
too much.
Present, right?
Yeah, being present.
Yeah.
And then a negative. It kind of plays
not a negative,
or like a hard thing.
I don't want to use the word negative, but just something that you maybe had to overcome in being an entrepreneur. You know what I mean? Because it's a big task to take on.
It's huge.
You know?
Yeah, no, it's hard.
Yeah,
it's definitely
for sure.
hard.
Yeah.
And this is like the same answer as time management.
Yeah.
It's hard to make time to call family, especially when you're not near them. So you just have to figure out how to make it work. Okay. And sometimes you feel like you're doing a bad job. Mm-hmm. Like you feel like you're skimming the surface on a couple subjects. And you're like, no, like I'm gonna call on Sundays. I sit down and I'm gonna call all my family today, and I just sit down, mom, dad, my sister.
Pretty intense. Yeah.
But I think it's important. But yeah, you do feel like you're falling behind a little bit.
Right.
At times.
And that's something too. Like we just kind of us types that are type A and just kind of like go. It's like we can't, like, people want to talk about balance, but if you want to be great at something, if you want to be the best at something, if you want to be like a high achiever, high performer, there's not going to be balance. Like, yes, we've got to have that time where we spend with ourselves, kind of our thoughts, and have that community of friends. But if you want to go above and beyond normal, I firmly believe, and I'll preach all day, every day, there's not going to be balance in your life.
I totally agree. And this could be a whole nother podcast.
We're going to have to get you back on then.
I will say this, though. Social media makes it seem like everyone's so freaking balanced. And it is not true. And I do agree that if you're trying to achieve something big, you are not going to be balanced. Right. And that's okay. And, and that comes into the time management, is choosing what's going to keep you sane and then keep you moving forward. Right. And it's more about supporting the chaos than trying to be, put together all the time. Right. And have the, perfect whatever you want to, whatever filter you want to put on your life and present to the world. Like, that's just, it's not realistic.
It's not reality.
No.
That's something that I have to remind myself every day, because I really struggle with perfectionism, and through that there's anxiety and all of this stuff. Like where I'm at right now, my life is and I read this every single morning. I've written it on a little note card. It's pinned up on my wall, and it says, there are no perfect days. There are no perfect training days, because for me, my lifting weights and my physical training is very important, and I get really anal and can get really anxious about that. So it says, there are no perfect days, no perfect training days, so be fearless and attack. So that just means there's not going to be a perfect day, Quentin. You're not going to have a perfect training session. Just go out, and attack the day. Be fearless, be bold, put yourself out there, and just accept the chaos, the craziness, and the sloppiness of life. And for me, just reading that and having that locked into my mind to start my day, because it's a part of my morning routine. It's like one of the first things I read in the morning. It just, I can just say, okay, I'm just going to go out and just attack the day.
I think the biggest part about being an entrepreneur is having intention, having action towards your intention, but being okay if shit hits the fan.
Right, because it's going to, right?
Yeah,
it's going to.
Inevitable.
That's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, what for you? And I think this is going to be the last, second to last question for you personally, Ellen, because when you are an entrepreneur, again, when you are type A, when you are trying to be above average and above normal and achieve everything that you want to achieve, and you're serving other people and helping other people, sometimes it's really easy to neglect ourselves. Yes. And I know if I don't pour into myself first, then I'm not able to, for a very long time, pour into other people's lives and serve them. So I've had to learn in my life, in my 20s, when I was just not getting my sleep, not taking care of myself, eating my crap, all that. Like, I had to go through a season of Quentin, you have to take care of yourself first. And then you can go out into the world and boldly and fearlessly serve others and love others and help others. So you being in service, you being an entrepreneur, just share a little bit with myself and the listeners the importance of you taking care of yourself first, you know, just being aligned with your values and your health so that you can be the best that you can be for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that starts with sleep. For me.
Amen.
Because if I'm tired and cranky, I'm not going to have a good vibe for my clients in the gym or in my office. And I'm less open too if I'm not feeling good.
Right.
So I need to be on point, but like, you know, open and gentle as well. So I think that really plays into sleep, friends, having fun, and for a little while I was lost with goals with fitness, and 2 months ago I decided to run a 50K this summer. And so I do think having goals for me personally has helped keep me honest to spending time on myself. So going on runs, even though it sounds like you're adding more fire, I actually have a lot of fun running and then talking about it, and it's me time. So yeah, having goals and having something to work towards, and it's definitely helpful.
Awesome. So last question for you, Ellen, today is, what sets your soul on fire?
Having something to work towards.
Okay.
Yeah, having a reason to work towards it. In August, I'm partnering with a clinical psychologist, and we're going to open a mind-body clinic.
Sweet.
And so, same thing with the 50K. Like, that drives me to run more and to train more and get into the gym. Having this business on the horizon, like, I'm fired up right now. I can't wait to open this. And she specializes in trauma, and I get so many patients in my clinic, not only in physical pain, but in emotional pain.
Absolutely.
And if you think they're separate, they are not. And when I partner with her, like, I can't wait to see the results that we get with people.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is your time now, Ellen, for anybody that's listening to this, that's out here in Colorado in the area, and they want to reach out to you, they want to find out more about you, kind of what your practice is all about, and things of that nature. They want to just maybe start training with you, coming to you for chiropractic work, soft tissue work, all of that. Where can our listeners reach out to you and find out more about you?
All right, sure. So thechiropracticlaboratory.com is my website. If you slap on LNDC at thechiropracticlaboratory.com, that's how you can email me. The Chiro Lab, so _Chiro_Lab is my Instagram handle. I think that's
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And then what and I know you just mentioned it, but one more time for a reminder, what's the thing that you're opening up in the fall with the other lady?
It's called Fortitude, Mind and Body.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that also going to be here in Boulder?
That is not. That's going to be down towards Denver.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm keeping my office here in Boulder, and I'll continue training my clients here in Boulder. But the Mind Body Clinic will be hopefully in the Highland area, low-high, northwest part of Denver.
Sweet. Awesome. All right. Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you, Ellen, so much for your time today, and just sharing your story and digging into kind of the chiropractic and just everything that you're all about. So great conversation, and really appreciate your time.
All
okay.
Right. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So listeners, I just want to once again thank you for tuning into the 127 Fit podcast. If you guys want to get a hold of me, you can reach out to me through Instagram. That's at 127fitness. Facebook at Quentin Vars. My website, which is just blogs, my writing, some of my deep inner thoughts, is 127fitness.com. And if you guys could please do me a huge favor and like, subscribe, share, and then especially within iTunes, if you're listening to the podcast through the iTunes app, please leave a review. 5 stars would be great, but just leave a review. That just helps with the podcast world and people being able to find the podcast and just to get more ears. So that would be a lot of help. And then if you think you would be an awesome guest, or if you have a guest or two, a friend or two, maybe an acquaintance in mind that you think would be an awesome guest for the 127 Fit podcast, you can reach out to me, send me an email, which is 127fit@gmail.com. Per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. This time until next time, I will catch you guys later.